What's up, y'all? This is Z-Trip, and you're checking out MVRemix.com.
www.mvremix.com. So, who or what inspired you or motivated you to be so persistent with achieving your goal of being a DJ? Because I read how you were very determined to the point that you neglected relationships and such. What spurred that on?
You know what? Honestly, I would have to say it's for the mere fact that I found out that I was actually pretty good at something, and I knew that I could be successful at it, you know? And so I don't know if it was one person or somebody other than myself and sort of my drive at going, hey, you know what, I have a vision and I have sort of a dream, and also, like, I enjoy doing it. So, you know, half of it was a little bit of like, you know, I neglected a lot of things to make it happen, but it's also because I love it so much, you know? It's like, when you love something as much as I do, DJing and music, and you actually are able to get a paycheck at the end of the day for it, it sort of doesn't become work anymore. It becomes a passion, and it becomes sort of a drive. And so, and also it was sort of like, you know, when I realized that I was okay, and you know, I wasn't the best, but I didn't suck, and I knew that I could sustain myself doing this. That's when I was like, you know what, I want to set out to actually, like, take this as far as I can take it. And I didn't really know. There was no ceiling, and I'm still sort of like not knowing where it's going to go or where it could end up. I mean, I'm really happy and stoked that I've been so successful with it, but I'm also very, like, you know, I never know what's around the corner, and so technically, to a degree, you have to keep you have to be on your toes about that.
Definitely. Now, everyone that sees you live just goes on and on and on about how awestruck they were by it. Who inspired your live performance?
God, I can't say that there's one person in particular either on that. It's sort of a combination of my upbringing. I think, you know, my brother, having the musical knowledge that he had, and what he brought to sort of the table as far as turning me on to music long before I actually knew what hip hop was. So, I mean, that whole sort of rock element, you know, was his doing. But then at the same time, the people that I had recognized or that had inspired me, like, you know, people like Marley Marl or Red Alert, or people like that, or DJs who I'd heard play, or Bambaataa or Jazzy J, had always inspired me to sort of push the boundaries and try new things, you know. And not everything would always work, but, like, it's one of those things of I think also on top of me and my upbringing and whatnot, it was also every other DJ that I was playing with, or playing that night, or playing playing in the town where I was playing, or the show I was playing at. Because every DJ to me, they didn't all sound the same, but they had the same records, and a lot of people were playing and doing the same things with the same records. And I thought, well, that's good, but there's so much more you can do, and if you stretch out a little bit, you may lose a lot of people, but at least you're pushing boundaries. And I've always sort of been a big sort of, you know, I back that. If anybody can sort of push it and do something that hasn't been done, or just do it differently for that matter, and have their own sort of flavor to it, then that's, I think, is the reason why it works, or could work, and also the reason why I get into it so much. Because, you know, I don't know how many times I would go to a show and hear like 2 or 3 DJs play before me, and you couldn't really, you know, I could tell, but I could tell that the crowd couldn't tell what the difference was between the two, you know?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I tried to make sure that I stood out, and not so much for being, like, for the whole point of standing out, but just going, hey guys, you know what, like, your crowd isn't necessarily just going to be a crowd that listens to quote-unquote hip-hop music. They might listen to all sorts of different styles of music, and you gotta recognize that, because if not, you're not really going as far out as you can, you know. Yeah. A lot of people played it safe. I tried not to play it safe.
Yeah. Now, sort of spurring on from the whole rock upbringing, why was it that you got into DJing as opposed to going into a band or something along those lines?
Well, I did, actually. I played drums, and that's how I started. before anything was playing drums. And my brother played guitar, and my mom played guitar and keyboards and sang. And so there was always we were always playing music in the family, and I enjoyed it. And I thought drums were sort of the closest thing that I could get to because I loved beats. I just loved percussion and tempos and changes and fills, and I just loved the anchor of being locked into a beat. But I found with DJing, I was like, I could actually sort of achieve some of the same principles of drumming with DJing. And some of the records and things that I was getting into were very beat based. Hip hop was very based around the beat and syncopated, stuff. And so that was sort of what drew me into that. Plus, all the rock music that I really dug was mostly beat driven. Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, things like that were very beat driven sort of records. So technically, that was sort of it. I sort of tried the rock band thing, so to speak, and played with my brother's friends, and we'd do a house party here or whatever. And I was super young, but after a while, I realized it was more about I could have more control and I could be the band with DJing and still keep the drumming element to it.
Mm-hmm. So, also, you've had your material featured in a lot of Shorty's skateboarding videos. How do you feel when you have various tracks of yours played as a soundtrack to a different image? And how do you feel when it's done without your consent?
Well, the thing is, it's really weird. I don't mind my music being put in skate videos or snowboard videos because that's cool. I get down with that. And I can relate. It's almost like it's almost like getting props. Like if you're a punk band and you get your song in one of those things, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
If I get something I've done in one of those things, it's cool. People actually give a shit enough to want to put it in their video. I think that's an honor actually. But without my consent, there's sort of an unwritten law, I think, that goes on in hip-hop that a lot of people don't realize. If you put somebody else on, and you give them props, and you play their record, or you champion their sound, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
that's exactly what you do want. You want people going, yo, man, you gotta hear this, it's so fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
Or, what is that? Where can I hear it? That's how it spreads. We don't really have, and never really had, and I still think to this day we don't have the correct version of an outlet. We don't have a really good radio station. We don't have a really good means to get all this music out. The real dirt, the real underground shit. It's college radio. That's sort of what that's if you can get on a college radio station, you've made it in that realm. And that to me is sort of sad because some of this music has the ability to go overseas. It has the ability to hit all sorts of people and doesn't get heard because it doesn't have necessarily the right vehicle. So, having my song or something of mine on a skate video or on a mixtape or whatever is really cool. It's what I try and do when I put mixtapes together. Is I try and grab all the people who I think would dig it and would be down. Because that's sort of the whole thing. Is it's hip hop is very based on the shout out and very based on the recognition of, oh man, he's helping me out, I'm helping him out. So, I think that's sort of the fine line. But when it's crossed is when you have like a big company, somebody who's got a lot of money and a lot to offer, and they take it and they don't necessarily give the right recognition back, or they just sort of take it on face value. Like, there's a way to do it cool, and there's a way to do it not cool. And I could get into all the differences between what is cool and what isn't cool. But if you know the time and you can sort of put two and two together, you'll realize when someone's getting fucked and when someone's getting props.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, it stands to reason. Now, with regards to shifting gears, why did you choose the title?
Well, for a couple different reasons, actually. It was there's sort of three different reasons. The first is sort of along the lines of, halfway through making this record, I was stuck in a situation where I was trying to make a record that was a mix record and sort of showcased what I do as a DJ, and basically make it happen that way. And about a year into it, we just couldn't get shit cleared. You know, people just didn't have a system set up to address my kind of mixing, and you know, I guess, you know, our team, we didn't really have anything set up for. It just wasn't in the cards, man. There was no way. So basically a year's worth of me working on it, wielded, you know, no results, nothing really good. So halfway into it, I had to turn around and technically shift gears and produce a record, and make a record that had to be, you know, something completely different. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first reason of where that name came up, is like halfway through my process, I had to shift gears. So that's that. The second thing is, in the album itself, once I sat down and started realizing, I got to produce a record, I had to come with all sorts of different kinds of music that I liked, and wanted to come with different styles and stuff. So this record was all over the place, and I thought, well, how am I going to string this all together and make it make sense? And so it was sort of like, well, what makes sense when you're shifting gears and you're going from, you know, say you're going on and this is really corny, but say you're going on a trip, okay?
Uh-huh.
And you have to go from point A to point B. You're shifting gears off all the way, going up hills, going on dirt roads, going slow, going fast. And to me, it's all sort of under the guise of you're in a car going on a journey, and this is a physical thing you have to continue to do. And so that sort of made sense musically, is that all these songs, one was a fast one was a slow one was up, one was down, one was funny, one was sad, one was whatever. So I was like, yeah, that sort of makes sense. Let me just sort of shift gears through it. So there's that, and then the physical, the last thing is, sorry for the long-winded, but it's you know, it's sort of the whole reason behind the name. But the last thing is that the album itself starts out on a very sort of ode to early hip-hop and what got me into it, and the sounds that sort of got me open to it, and the party rocking and whatnot, and having people like Whip or Whip on it, and, you know, over an old-school track, and then having someone like Lyrics Born, who's new, over an old-school sounding track. Mm-hmm. Started out like that, and eventually, through the course of the record, ends up on a very current sort of thing with Chuck D sort of speaking about, you know, things that are going on right now, and the song I did with Chester, which is very much, you know, a now sound. And so that's sort of the deal. It's sort of it's a travel, it's a journey, and that was sort of the whole point. Was like, it just makes sense to call it that. And plus, I'm sort of getting out of I'd like to think I'm getting out of the DJing in front of everybody and having to do house parties to make a living, and trying to get into, hey, I can produce records, or I can actually make records, and you know, the journey that the Dr. Dre's and the DJ Premiers have made from being a DJ to a producer.
Definitely.
So, sorry for the long...
No, it was a good answer. Sort of following on from that, how did the Grandmaster Caz thing come about?
Well, it was, you know, I met him and I met Caz. I met him and Whip or Whip at the same party, which was actually the Charlie Ahern book signing party for, it's Yes, Yes, Y'all is the book, I think. I believe that's the one. I could be wrong on the title. But basically, both of those guys were there, and they, you know, I sort of met them and spoke with them, and I ended up DJing for Grandmaster Caz at the party, and, you know, someone, you know, there was turntables there, and somebody happened to be recording it on a cassette, and in the middle of me spinning, he stopped and he was like, yo, I want to kick this a cappella thing, and he went into it, and, you know, it was just interesting. Tension, you know, it was a little tense because, you know, here's this guy who was, you know, sort of breaking down a little bit. You can sort of hear it in his voice on his speech, man. It's like, it was really dope, man. And I was trying to explain to people, like, what was happening after the show was over or whatever, and I couldn't really explain it to people correctly. I was like, you know, it's like telling someone the fish was this big, it got away, you should have seen it. And my friend of mine, Dusk, who actually starts the record off, was the first voice on the record, was taping it on cassette, and he ended up, like, giving me a copy, and I was like, oh man, this I have to put on the record, because it, you know, it sort of basically embodies everything that I'm trying to say with this record. And he says it in one line: my name is hip hop and I've always existed. And I'm like, fuck, man, that's it, that's the crown jewel in this record. And hit him up about it, and he was down, and so here we are, you know.
So with that,
he was down to come and be on the record.
So basically, with that, was that from the original recording then, or?
What do you mean?
Well, basically, it's really crisp and clear on the record.
Yeah, no, it was from the cassette. I mean, it's clear and crisp and clean and whatnot, but it also sort of has a bit of a dirty feel, like you can get a crowd in there and shit. And it's like, it was a moment that got captured, man, basically. And you know, the fact that it was recorded on cassette, you know, so you got the whole room in there, was just dope to me because it's, you know, it was such the I don't know, it's the whole fact that it happened, and the fact that I have it on the record, and the fact that it translated, and he was down to put it on there, and it just helps sort of paint the picture a little bit, because, you know, a lot of people don't even know that about that dude, you know, that he wrote the lyrics to Rapper's Delight, and that he never got any credit for it. You know, like, a lot of people don't know his story, and same thing with Whipper, same thing with a lot of people who sort of came up from that time. There's so much history that's lost, and
yeah,
I don't know, I really wanted to make a point to include that on the record, because that's where it came from. That's where I came from, you know. That's my background, you know.
Definitely a beautiful finale to the record. I love that one.
Thanks, man.
No problem. So, have fun with this one. And I ask Lyricsborn this question, and I ask it in every interview I do. Have you seen the film Fight Club?
Yeah.
Right. There's a scene in it where basically Brad Pitt says, if you could fight any celebrity, who would you fight? And Lyricsborn gave me Schwarzenegger. Gifted Gab said Gary Coleman. So, if you could fight any celebrity, who would you fight?
Wow, that's a good question. Who would I fight?
Who irritates the shit out of you?
George Bush. I'd fight George Bush.
Would you win?
If it was just me and him, yeah, I'd win. But chances are that it would never happen like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's probably the one I'd want to fight.
Cool.
Just for everybody who wants to fight. Hopefully, I could be the guy. Or you know, either him or O'Reilly. I think O'Reilly, he burns the shit out of me. That guy.
Yeah. Is there a genre of music that doesn't mesh well with you?
Yeah. Trance.
Okay.
Trance music doesn't really lend itself too well, in my opinion.
And is that just on the DJing side, or is that also in terms of your comfort when you listen to it alone?
I think it's sort of... I tend to think it's a little bit of both. I mean, but now I'm stepping into a category where, I mean, you got trance DJs who are making millions doing what they do, and they're doing it with DJing, so technically it works. But to me, I don't know, it's sort of it's like the new age sort of music of today. You know, it's a very niche sort of market, and they do what they do probably wonderfully, but I just feel like a lot of it has no soul. It's very mindless,
mm-hmm.
and very gutless, and it's, you know, that to me is that's the kind of music that I can't really find myself doing anything with that, or even really appreciating music like that, because it doesn't necessarily serve a purpose for me,
mm-hmm.
and that's just me, you know. But
yeah.
Again, it's just me preference. I don't want to sit and bash that scene or those guys, but I just don't get it.
Yeah.
It's real easy. It's easy to mix. It's probably the easiest shit in the world to mix. That's why there's a million DJs like it.
Is there anything aside from the album that you've been working on? Any other projects you've guested upon, or things that are in the works?
Well, there's this Jackson 5 remix that I did for this Motown remixed album that's coming out.
Uh-huh.
I believe around the same time that my record's coming out, or maybe shortly after. But it's that's happening, and it's kind of interesting because I was able to get the master tapes for the Jackson 5, Want You Back, and was able to remix it the way I sort of wanted to, and you know, and it's also on a compilation with, you know, people like Jazzy Jeff, and Questlove is on there, and Spinner, and a couple other people. So it's like I'm in really good company. And the super cool thing is that they kicked the remix album off with my remix, which is really dope.
Nice.
So, but that's coming out. There's also the Scratch All the Way Live DVD, which is coming out, which is basically like, if you saw the Scratch documentary, it's basically that, that documentary was all of us sort of talking about what it is we do and sort of trying to explain it to people. And this next DVD is sort of the application. It's it's live sort of concert footage of the Scratch tour, which is like me and Jazzy J and Executioners and Mixmaster Mike. So it's kind of a cool little thing that if people sort of explains what we were trying to talk about in the first movie. So that's coming out. That actually comes out the same day as my album comes out on Tuesday.
Nice.
So.
Nice. Do you have any last words to your fans or potential fans that are going to be reading or hearing this?
I guess I owe a shitload of thanks to everybody. I mean, there's no way I could do what I do or be where I am at without people sort of helping me get to where I'm at. So, I mean, that sort of goes to anybody at all. And it's, I know that sounds cheesy, but it's, if there's a way to sort of do it without saying, and a big thanks to all you guys, it's like, it's real. It's real deep, heartfelt. Like, the fact that I've been able to sustain a career this long is, I owe it mainly to the people who are into the same sort of music and the same style of what I do, and if it wasn't for those people, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So, this album really isn't all about me. It's all about, all the people who've helped me along the way, people on the record, people coming to the shows, the whole deal. It's like finally a hip-hop DJ is making some more noise. Not to say that the other DJs before me haven't, but finally this DJ is making some noise, I guess I should say. That's more proper.